Hi, this is Ron Gannett. And those of us that live here in Saddlebrook, Arizona, during this COVID-19 crisis, we're asking ourselves, why do Christians go through difficult times? In fact, we're calling it a suffering sampler. And we're sampling different reasons, and today we have come to reason number 10, and I'd like to call it the Father's love. You remember when you were a child and you would do something and your parents would have to discipline you in some way, and they would turn to you and say, "Now, son, I'm doing this because I love you." And you'd think, well, how much do you love me if you're making me go through this? And yet, after you went through that discipline and now as an adult, you look back and say, boy, I am so glad I went through that because it reminded me how much my Father truly loves me. You know, you have a Father in heaven as well. And the Father in heaven, He disciplines us. Listen to these words from Hebrews chapter 12, where the Apostle Paul has just finished in chapter 11 talking about heroes of the faith. He is encouraging people that, you haven't struggled like those people, but you have struggled. And one of the reasons you struggle is because you have a Father who loves you in heaven. He says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when He rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one He loves." I love that. He disciplines the one He loves, and He chastens everyone He accepts as His sons. You know, my friends, whenever you go through discipline, when you go through a situation that is unfair, you can't understand it or explain it, you think to yourself, I don't deserve this. It may just be something that the Lord is allowing to happen in your life to do two things. One, to prove to you that He loves you because He wants the best for you. And secondly, it shows His ownership over you, that you belong to Him. And you know, the text tells us that He doesn't discipline those who are not His children. And you wonder, why do the ungodly succeed? Why? It seems like God is not taking out His hand upon them, simply because they are not His children. But when God disciplines us, when He shapes us, when He molds us, He is showing that we belong to Him. I love the way the writer of Hebrews says, God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in His holiness. No discipline seems pleasant at the time, but later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace to those who have been trained by it. To those who have listened to what God is doing, we can share in His holiness, and we can produce a harvest of righteousness and peace in our lives and in the lives of those that we love and serve. You know, my friends, our Father in heaven is always involved in our lives. And we should never, ever forget that we have a Heavenly Father who is using all of this junk to show love and to shape us into the people He wants us to be, to produce that harvest of righteousness. I know as a pastor, you go through wonderful moments with people. And then if you've ever been in church, you know that church life can have conflict as well. You take the good, the bad, and the ugly that comes with the nature of human nature, being with people. And you look back over your career and you see all the things that you have gone through, and you wonder, is there really a purpose to it all? But then I find myself one morning sitting having breakfast with a young man who's a pastor in a rural community. And he's sort of silent, not talking. And I say, "Son, is there something going on I don't understand?" He said, "Yes, I'm going to a board meeting tonight and I'll probably be fired." Well, he said something about another person in the church. They got to that person, and you know how it goes on. And they're having a big church board meeting that night, and they're going to gang up against him and try to get him out of the church. He said, "What do you do?" He said, "Well, from my experience, I've learned that the words of Jesus are true. Like a lamb before her shears is silent, so He did not open His mouth." In His moment of unfairness, Jesus remained silent. And I think if they're unfair to you, I would let them just verbally abuse you, and then after they're done, saying, "Is there something you've forgotten? Is there something else you want to add?" And I said, in the process of that, If someone in that board doesn't see the unfairness, even the evil in that situation, and doesn't stand up to protect you, you don't want that church. Well, the next morning he called. He said, "You will never guess what happened." He said, "I did exactly what you said. I didn't say a word. I let them, shout. I let them complain. I let them be unfair." And finally, one of the other board members stood up and said, "No one deserves to be treated like this." And I was reinstated as a pastor of that church. And they disciplined that man and asked him not to act like that anymore. My friends, if I had never gone through the junk in my career, I would never have been able to produce a harvest of righteousness to help and to encourage that dear man as well. So when it comes your way, don't look at the pain. Look up to heaven and realize that you have a loving Heavenly Father and that He's always involved in your life to produce a harvest of righteousness and peace in you and those you love.